Hi, this is Paul Christopher Hobby, aka Giant Buddha of PokerIsASkill.com with Hand of the Day number 6. Today we're going to take a look at another pot limit Omaha hand that I played. I'm not too fond of how I played this hand from start to finish. I think pre-flop is fine, flop's probably pretty bad, and that leads me to a tricky turn spot where I'm really not sure whether I did the right thing or not. So we're going to take a look at that, talk about some of the different factors that went into the decisions. I want to note that it's very important that you do review hands that you play and you're not confident of how you played them. You can't always find the answers yourself. Sometimes it's good to post them in forums, ask a friend, have either a coach or a group of other players that you respect, whose opinions you respect. So that's a very good thing to review hands that you don't think you played that well. It's also good to review hands that you do think you played well, particularly when you make a play that you might not typically make, but it came to you during the course of play, and you want to remind yourself, hey, this was a pretty good thing I did. Let me make sure that it works and that I can use it again next time that the situation arises. So without further ado, let's take a look at the hand. I pick up a rainbow two-pair hand here, queens and tens in the cutoff, and it's going to fold to me, and I open to 2.5 blinds. I'm kind of interested what people think about different raise sizes. My typical open raise is 2.5 blinds, except on the button where I actually always min raise. And I have some thoughts about this. I like to keep my open raise fairly small so that I feel like I kind of encourage people to play with me, so I'll see some flops. Also, if I get 3-bet, stacks are going to be deep enough relative to the 3-bet. The 3-bet will be smaller because it's pot limit. They can't make a larger 3-bet. So I'll be able to take more flops then and have more maneuverability post-flop, which I like. I feel like it gives me a little more play, and while I might not have a strong post-flop edge against against more seasoned Omaha players, I like the idea of having deeper stacks relative to the pot because it just sort of I feel like I'm going to learn more and actually get more out of every hand doing that. So that said, I'd be very interested what people have to say about different pot limit Omaha, raise sizes. So anyway, I get 3-bet here by the button, that looks like a pot size raise. One note is if I had made it 350, then him potting it would be 11? I think it would be 11 because it's triple. No, it would even be 12. That doesn't make sense. I guess 8x, $8 there is not quite pot. But the point being that he could certainly make it larger. So here, $8, and I'm 133 behind. We had 136 blinds pre. So that really leaves plenty of depth here where I definitely want to call with this two-pair hand. With no suits, I'm not thinking about 4-betting. I don't think I would really 4-bet this hand anyway. Mostly I'm hoping he does have a hand like aces or kings, and I flop top set and manage to get it in. Maybe he has a little bit of extra equity with a draw or something, so he's happy to get it in. Maybe I get it in with 60% equity, something like that. Or I can certainly flop some straights. I can have straight draws and an overpair, stuff like that. There's plenty of good things that can happen here. Also, on some boards, he might just make a c-bet. I might call him unimproved with an overpair or even 2 overpairs, so with 4 outs to top set plus some showdown value, and then he might just give up and my hand might be good. So I have a number of ways to win this pot. I'm pretty happy with my hand and to take a flop. Now, I flop top set and an open-ended straight draw on a board that there's already a straight out there, and I check. And I don't like this. When I checked, I can't say that I had a very strong plan of what to do. With $17 in the pot, if he were to pot it and I were to repot it, then it would be, I think 17 times 4 would be the total bet size. So that's like 68, maybe 70 since it's 1750. So $70, that would be we'd be getting about half of the effective stacks in, which would leave I guess sort of an awkward turn spot where then I'd have like a pot size bet where if the draws got there, I'd have kind of fine, sort of almost good odds to draw to a boat. It would be very close, and I would probably just go ahead and get it in. I mean, that probably wouldn't be that bad. Maybe that's overthinking it, that it's not that bad. Then again, if he's probably actually not going to just call a check pot, right? If I repot it here, he's probably just going to ship it if he decides to go with the hand, and he's going to either have some draw with a lot of equity, or he's going to have maybe the nuts. If I'm really lucky, maybe he has pocket jacks or pocket nines, and that's the only way I think I can get it in really awesome against him. Otherwise, I think he'd have a hand like ace ace king 10, or even just ace ace king jack or something like that. Ace ace or ace king 10, something like that with nut diamond, nut hearts, or even king high hearts. Maybe he could have a hand like queen jack 10 9, in which case I would be thrilled. I'd be all over that. I'd be free rolling basically. So that would be excellent. So there's a lot of ways that money could go in pretty good here on this board. The thing is, I think I probably should have just let out. The thing about Omaha is that people definitely don't c-bet the flop nearly as often as they do in certainly in limit hold'em, and I feel like they c-bet a little less than they do in no limit hold'em as well, because it's kind of like somebody always has a piece of it, so it's just a little harder to get folds. That said, if I look at some of these players fold to c-bet, they're really high. Part of that could also be though that there are a lot more multi-way pots. So let's take a look at this guy's what am I looking for? His c-bet flop is so far 80. So I can't say whether that was before or after this hand. So it seems like I actually had a pretty good chance of getting him to bet. So I don't hate checking and trying to check raise. I think the money could probably go in pretty decent that way. If I bet and he raises, do I want to get it in? I'm not so sure. Maybe I probably do. I mean, I have the open-ended straight draw. If there was no flush draw out there, I'd feel a little better. That said, maybe he's more likely to get it in with hands that I'm, definitely ahead of when there is the flush draw out there, because then he can have that flush draw component, and he might not actually have a better straight draw than me. He might be drawing to chop with the straight draw and then drawing to win with the flush draw. I do have one heart, which is a little bit of a blocker to that. The one thing I haven't mentioned so far is that I have two tens, and that's a pretty strong asset for my hand. This is a lot better than having, say, queen queen 10 9 or something like that, where besides the fact that the 9 would be blocking one of my full house cards, the extra 10 in my hand, having two tens in my hand means there's only two left in the deck. So compare this to, say, queen queen deuce deuce or something like that. When I hold the two tens, he's half as likely to have either a straight or a straight draw. So that's a really big deal, actually. And that means when I do get it in, I'm going to be getting it in a lot better, because he's going to have a made straight half as often as he possibly, as he could otherwise. And he's going to, he's going to have half as many straight draw combinations. So it's only, he's basically half as likely. If you actually look at the percentage of his range that makes up, it's going to be a little different. But the point is, there's only half as many ways he can flop a straight, and there's half as many ways he can have a straight draw, which really, I guess if he has a straight draw, the only thing I'm worried about is something like Jack 10 ace or so, which when the king comes, his ace 10 scoops me, whereas the 8 comes and we're chopping. If you just had a hand like ace 10, XX with no board matching card and obviously no king or 8, then when the 8 came, I would have a straight, and he wouldn't actually be able to make a straight. Say he had like 3 aces and then 10, or ace 10 deuce or something like that. Then really only the king would be. I'd really only be worried about the king, and of course an ace if he made a bigger set. So anyway, this flop checks through, and then I get a 10 on the turn, and this card, when you look at it, it's like, oh, cool, I have two sets. Well, no, not cool. I'm blocking my boat outs. You could say I'm blocking myself, or I don't know, something like that. It sounded funnier when I was thinking of it before. But the point being, if that card's a deuce and I have queen queen on queen jack nine deuce, then I have 10 outs to a full house or quads, and that's pretty good. Here now I only have 8 outs. I have 2 outs to quads. Yay, whoop-de-doo. That I probably don't need quads. Full house is top boat is probably going to be just fine and dandy. I lost with king's full top boat earlier today when a guy made quads, but that doesn't happen so often. You'd rather have the extra 2 outs than one of those outs just giving you another set of quads. Or a set of fours, as they used to say in the day, which was really confusing because you could turn a set of fours and that would be on the flop, and that would be 4 of a kind. Well, so much for that history lesson. The point being, here now I have 8 outs to either a full house or quads, of course, and then I also have another 8 outs actually to a board playing straight. Where the thing about a board playing straight in Omaha is that it's really easy for someone to have the better straight, but at the same time it's actually harder for them to play the board. Whereas in Hold'em, obviously they can always play the board unless they can make better. But in Omaha, if say the guy had ace ace 9-9 or say, and an 8 or a king came, he would not be able to play the board. He'd have a set with with the 9-9 there. So that's actually more significant, I guess, in Omaha, being able to play the board like that. So here on the turn, I think I probably have a check call. I guess I could bet, but I feel like I'm just going to get raised and then just want to vomit, and that doesn't seem, I don't like throwing up. So I'd like to avoid that. And he bets 11, which isn't that big. It's 2/3 pot. And I was thinking about it, and I was really only considering my boat and my quad outs and thinking, well, 8 outs, there's 44 unseen cards in the deck. I'm kind of assuming he probably has a straight, something like King Jack that he checked back on the flop. I don't know. That assumption might not even be that accurate. He might not have a straight here all the time because he might have bet the flop with a lot of things that would have connected enough to have turned a straight here on the 10. But I'm thinking 8 outs out of 44. That's 4.5 to 1 about is what I need, and I'm really only getting 2.5 to 1. So I need to get an average of $22 in on the river, something, give or take, something like that. So I thought if the board pairs, I'm probably not going to get called by a straight, just because when I check call here and then bet a board pairing river, it looks so much like I made a boat. The thing is, I could bet, say if I bet full pot on the river, then I'd only need to get called around half the time for that to be enough to justify my turn call. The other thing that I really didn't take into consideration during the play of the hand was that a king or an 8 really might be good, and if it is good, there's a good chance that I'll check it and then he'll check it back, and my hand will either be good and I'll win, or it'll be worth a chop because he'll have some hand that also connects with the board, and he similarly makes a board playing straight. So in other words, he doesn't have a king, or if a king is the river, then he doesn't have an ace. So that's basically this hand. I fold here, actually, sort of kind of like a hero fold. I mean, really just a nitty fold is what it is. I mean, it says hero here, but really it should probably just say nit and kind of Omaha noob. So that's that's my pot limit Omaha hand here. There's almost more questions than there are answers, but I think it's really critical to take a critical look at your own hands and really think, well, this hand didn't feel good, and when I played it, I marked it and I was like, yeah, that was a good solid fold there on the turn because I kept myself out of trouble and I wasn't really getting the right odds and all that. But looking back at it, I think that was incorrect. And the flop play where I was thinking that a check raise was maybe not such a good idea. I actually think maybe it's a better idea than I'd given it credit for because I think I have a decent chance of, my check raise can really be a stack committing check raise. Even if he just calls, I'm not going to be getting it in bad on the turn pretty much ever. So that's fine also. And it seems like this player actually c-bets pretty aggressively. So I shouldn't have been too worried about him checking it back, which it turns out he did check it back. Maybe there's something about board texture here that I'm not considering in terms of knowing what his 3-betting range is like. I don't really have a strong handle on what people's 3-betting ranges are. They seem to be a little bit wider than they were maybe a year ago, the last time I really played much online PLO. I played some live PLO over last summer, and before that I'd been trying to get into it, play it online, but then Black Friday, all that jazz, and so here I am working on Pot Limit Omaha again, and making mistakes, making maybe pretty big mistakes, but learning from them, and that's really what's important. That's maybe even the real lesson of this hand is just review your hands and think critically about what you do. And sometimes something that you think was the mistake in the hand, maybe you look at it again and you think, well, that actually probably wasn't the worst thing I did in this hand. That might have even been good. And then you look at some other part of the hand and you think, well, I actually thought that was a good play, and looking back on it, maybe not so good. Once again, this is Paul Christopher Hoppy, aka Giant Buddha of PokerIsASkill.com. Leave your feedback on the website. I'd love to hear from you, and do the daily action plan so that I can come home and play poker there. And that if you're in the States and you want to play online poker there, we've got to stick up for our rights. So, cheers.